In the last lesson, we discussed the preview reading technique, which usually involves reading the introduction and conclusion to the material. In this video, we'll discuss the second step called an overview. After you finish reading the introduction and conclusion during the preview step, you'll want to dig a little deeper. So during the overview step, here's what you're going to do. You'll read all the headings, subheadings, and boldface words. If your material isn't structured this way, you could alternatively read the first sentence of each paragraph, since each first sentence is usually a main idea. As you're going through the material, you may come across graphs or diagrams. If this is the case, just read the titles of the diagrams. You don't need to fully analyze them just yet. The goal during the overview is to find the most important concepts that will be discussed in the material that you're reading. This part of the reading process shouldn't take that long. In some pieces of material, this may take you less than 1 minute. And of course, in long chapters, it might take you a little longer. But the goal is still the same. You want to get familiar with your reading material before you start reading it. And if you can get familiar with it, that will allow you to read faster, with strong comprehension, when you decide to read the material in its entirety. If you recall, the preview is the first step where you read the introduction and conclusion. The overview is the second step, where you read all the headings and boldface words, or the first sentences of each paragraph. Which leads us naturally to our third and most important step, the read. In other words, let's read the material that we've been getting familiar with. This is a three-step reading strategy called the multiple reading process. Preview, overview, read. Think about the way most people read. A lot of people start from the beginning and read in a very linear way to the end. But you don't have to read all material this way. In fact, reading this way is part of the reason why people read slowly. If you don't know what to expect from the material, you're going to have to read it slower. Imagine the alternative. If you start by reading the intro and conclusion, and then proceed to read all the headings or first sentences, then think about the advantage you have. When you start reading the material, you should naturally be able to go a little faster since you know what to expect. But what about your comprehension? That too should be enhanced since you're already somewhat familiar with the material. And there's a third area of reading that's very important to us, our retention. What you remember is largely a function of repetition. Look at all the repetition going on in this process. Those three steps are purposely set up to provide increased repetition during the reading process. Now, most people read something beginning to end and they wonder why they forget everything the next day. The answer has to do with repetition. If you don't preview and overview the material, then you've only had one repetition, and you'll likely forget much of what you read. The three-step multiple reading process helps us with the three areas of reading that we need to have in order to be efficient: speed, comprehension, and retention.